Okay. Hi, everybody. How's it going? What is happening? Let's see here. Just going to check my audio and make sure everything's good. Looks like it's good to me. It does. It does. Sorry, I'm a little late, but I'm here. Darn it. There's Joe. There's Dylan, Ben, all you folks. Good to see you all. I was so looking forward to this today. And Ibarge says, I did get some of that Tim Hortons coffee. That's good. That's good. Hopefully that was this morning. Probably not. But I got a coffee myself here. I'm good to go. Iced situation with some oat milk. So let's get into it. This week, I have been working on a new clinic to take out there into the world and do all over the place, hopefully. So first dates will be announced pretty soon. And there's a couple in the US. And then I'm going to take it overseas and do some stuff, I think. So pretty exciting. I'm really happy to get out there and excited to bring in a new sort of concept. So this one's going to be called Inspired by the Tone. I think I've talked about it a little bit before, but basically where I demonstrate some musical pieces that use all kinds of different guitar sounds. And then I get into the kind of the nitty gritty of like what sounds inspire certain sorts of parts and when you would use certain tones and when you would use maybe a different tone for different things. So I've come up with 6 pieces of music to play. 4 of them are original stuff that I wrote from scratch and worked up and using all kinds of sounds. And then I'm going to do a couple covers as well of like well-known tunes or songs I love that have great guitar tones that are kind of unique and are good examples, I think, of how some of our favorite players used interesting tones to further the musical the composition, and it's just been really fun. So I'm going to use my PT15s for this clinic. I'm also going to use the Quad Cortex. Quad Cortex I'm going to use in 4-cable method for the effects. I was thinking I would use the Quad because, well, number one, I really like it. And number two, it's easy to travel with. So, and then number 3, if I'm going to do a clinic maybe somewhere where it's not possible for me to have the amps there, I can just bring my guitar in the Quad and actually just insert an amp block where I would normally have an effect loop where I could insert, an amp into and use an amp 4-cable. I could do the clinic still with just the Quad, which means I can travel with a backpack and my guitar and go somewhere and do this clinic. And I'm kind of engineering it this time, so I don't even really need an interface. I could literally take the stereo out of my laptop to run some tracks, just to an 1/8-inch cable out of my laptop and give it to whoever's helping me do sound, plug it into a PA, get some monitors going in a PA, and I could do the clinic. So that's, some of the things I've learned through doing it in the past. I'm trying to make it so it's easy and also make it so it's like really packed full of hopefully good information. So I'm excited about it. So Inspired by the Tone Clinic, hopefully coming to you soon. I just been working on that all week. I did put out a couple videos this past week. I did one for the SLO2 module for the Synergy preamp system. And what else did I get out? Another video out. I just can't quite remember what it was. It's for a pedal of some sort. Oh, the Origin pedal. That's right. Which is kind of a blues breaker pedal. Just a terrific sounding drive pedal, actually. Blues breaker circuit, but with a custom mode that has more gain, and then it's got the adaptive circuitry stuff in it as well. That's kind of neat. That unique to the Origin stuff. If you guys like low gain drives or low to mid gain drives, it's really wonderful. So got some unique things going on. Anyways, all right. Using the new dark mode here in my streaming software. So, well, the screen normally looks totally white and really bright. I've got it dark right now. Not that that makes any difference to you, and it might not even be that interesting, but it's a whole new world to me over here on this end of things. Let's see. This is an interesting question. Jeff saying, does anyone have experience running a Friedman IRD in the front of an amp? Basically, it's made to go into either direct with IRs or turn off the IRs, and you could go into a sort of like a power amp or maybe into the effect return of an amp. But you could run it in the front of something, sure. kind of like loading down a Marshall or something and then running in front of another amp. And people do that. You know who does that is Mike Landau. He actually runs, like I just saw him last week, and he was running in front of an old park. And if you do it right, if you set the amp so that it's kind of flat EQ wise, which can be different on different amps, like how to actually set a flat EQ on an amp can be kind of interesting. But it you know, you want to get the amp to be as close to sort of, I guess, sort of transparent as possible is sort of the thinking, so that, you know, it's more acting like a power amp and not really adding that much tone shift or character of its own. But an old Marshall can work good for that, especially a super bass or JTM 45 or something. If you go into the normal channel, because the normal channel is quite neutral sounding, kind of like a power amp. So it's something that can be done. You will notice that you'll have varying success depending on what you're running into. And, you know, you might want to do a little research into how to set the tone stack relatively flat for your amplifier. You know, like on an old Fender, that can be like the mids all the way up, I think, and then like the bass and the treble off. Strange to think, but yeah, because the more you turn the bass and the treble up, kind of scoops the mids and does interesting things, I think. So you want to try and get that EQ as flat as possible, kind of like a power amp would be, a relatively transparent power amp. So just know that, and try some more radical EQ settings. Try turning the bass and the treble down, the presence down, and the mids up, and see what happens if you're going to plug it into the front of an amplifier, and see what happens. It can be different on different amps. It is different on different amps, depending on the tone stack design. Earl says, I believe Pete is on the road again. Logistics are unpredictable. Actually, I was just late. I ran into, it's a holiday weekend here in LA, and I like to get breakfast before I come here. And that set me back a little bit, because the holidays is everybody and their mother is out for breakfast and stuff like that. So it just took me a minute to get here in time and stuff, because of everybody putting their orders in. I love weekdays in LA because it's more people are working, and and then on the weekends it gets crazy, you know. Although LA has emptied out a little bit because it's holiday weekend, a lot of people went places. So, but it's still like, you know, the folks that are in town are out in force for brunch. Yeah. What else we got here? Let's see. Just reading through your comments and stuff, looking back through the chat. It's a super chat I got to get to up there. Yeah. Looks like the rack is bending under the weight. My amps. No, everything's pretty cool, I think. I've had these shelves for a long time. They were really well made. They were very expensive, I will say. I had them made at the same time that I had all these acoustic panels with the red on them that you see in here, made by the same person. He made these amp racks for me, and they've served me well. But it cost me about 10 grand to have all the panels done and everything, and all this, you know, these amp shells. It was a lot in retrospect, but they're good. When I was in my first place in Santa Monica, which was just like a little house sort of making videos, that was like 2009, 2010. I didn't have any of that stuff. I just had the amps stacked up on the floor, and I would move a speaker cable, and I had a cabinet in the closet, and that kind of thing. It was that sort of setup. And then I moved to a studio space that was kind of a commercial studio space in Santa Monica. And when I did that, I built out the room with these panels and stuff like that, and spent some money. And that was as YouTube was starting to turn into more of a thing for me. So yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Arthur says, I'm so obsessed with amazing vocalists. The last few days I felt like I've listened to every Sam Cooke tune like 50 times. Yeah, man, great singers are it's a thing. I love terrific singers too. You know, it's a skill that I don't possess. I don't feel like I'm a you know, sort of meat and potatoes background vocals guy. I have decent pitch, I think, and but you know, being a real singer is a whole nother. I feel like I'm like, as a singer, I'm like cowboy chords on acoustic guitar is sort of like the equivalent, you know, if we were to compare it with guitar playing. So, yeah. Okay. Just looking through the chat. I'm gonna grab that super chat in a sec. Ben says he's doing a group hang on YouTube, so go hang out at my faithful moderators group hang tonight. You can see his info there on the screen at Ben Coombs, YouTube at Ben Coombs. Okay. What's a good day look like? A good day look like? Spending time on building my first woodworking shop, then... Oh, I see. It's not a question. You're saying what it is like. Spending time on building my first woodworking shop, then getting to spend the afternoon at pizza party. Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate that. Love you too. Love you all. Good to have you all here on this holiday weekend. All right. Gonna look for that super chat. Tone clinic, what a great idea. Thanks. Yeah, it's, once again, I'm just trying to sort of build a clinic off of what people seem to like about what I do. So that's a lot of questions about tone and pedals and gear and stuff, but also I'm tying it in with playing. There's gonna be a lot of playing in the clinic because it's how the parts sort of relate to the tones. So, like when to use a compressor and what kind of part that kind of brings out. And one tone I came up with, actually built it starting off of a preset and then made a whole bunch of changes. It was a neural DSP preset in the quad, and it was called like 80s Heaven or something like that, and it's super modulated. It's like there's 2 choruses in series, which is something I think Dan Huff used to do, but it's really modulated. So there's pitch like a la Eddie Van Halen, and then there's also 2 choruses in series that are just making it like really liquidy. And so that's fun. And then I kind of contrast that with a high gain lead sound and go back and forth for the part that I came up with. But I really dig it. It's going to be everything from drier stuff and maybe some things you hadn't thought of doing, some using pitch blocks and stuff like that, pitch effects and stuff, and how to kind of really augment. Does the QC work as an audio interface? It actually does. Yeah. I could actually use the QC as an audio interface, but I probably won't in the clinic. I think I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. Like literally, it'll be guitar into the QC, the send out of the QC into the front of the amp, effects send to the amp back into the QC, and then stereo out of the QC into the return of that first amp and into the return of a second PT15 with 2 PT15 cabs, and it'll be in stereo. MIDI out of the QC into the Suhr mini MIDI box that allows me to then channel switch the amp per preset. And I'll be using all 3 channels on the amp into the cabs and just have the cabs mic'd. I guess I could come direct out of the amps too, and use the direct out if we'll see what the store or whatever I'm doing it wants to do. I can do either way. It's actually kind of a cool idea. Just go right to the PA with the IRs. So it sound good and it's less stands on stage and everything. But I will have the cabs up there. So that's a relatively simple setup. But in the event that I can't even have amps, like if I'm going to maybe a music school or something where it's not, if the clinic is not a sort of like a Suhr thing where there's amps for sure, I'm going to be able to be there. I can just run direct out of the QC. I love the idea of using these devices. It's something to think about if you've got an Axe Effects or a Helix or a Quad Cortex or something. When you use it in 4 cable method with your amps and you use it for your effects, you can then, of course, just copy your presets over to another bank or banks or whatever you need for space, however many presets you've got, and use the exact same presets, but with an amp block instead of, an amp. And it's kind of neat when you think about it. If you haven't thought of it before, all your foot pedal moves will stay the same and everything, like, so now you're just using a virtual amp inside the modeler. And if there's an occasion where you got to do a gig with no amp or, you're a fly date or something where it's a silent stage and there's not a hell of a lot of point in bringing a bunch of heads anyway at that point, you could literally on the QC make a capture of your amp and have the exact same sounds. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I have captures of my PT15 in the QC, and I'm sort of limiting myself to using those for the preset, because then it'll compare quite in a similar way to when I'm using the actual amp. So, you know, it's like, you know, I always prefer to use amps if I can, the living, breathing, you know, having the tubes there and everything. There's just something about it that's still cool. But if I can't, I can always run direct. So, Eston Ray there with a super chat. Good day to you. Good day to you, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jimmy says, I think the OG SLO module sounds better than the SLO2. Do you have both? I think they're very, very, very similar. I don't think there was much made in the way of circuit changes. I think the only thing that has changed is features. So now you've got a 3-band EQ in each channel. And you can EQ the crunch or, you know, whatever channel, you know, the 2 channels that you can set up as either crunch or overdrive. It's like the SLO module is having 2 of the, well, there's basically not the clean mode in there. So what, like, you know, on an SLO, you can go to the full clean sound, but I don't think there's much else difference other than that tight switch that allows you to kind of tighten things up. So circuit wise, you know, and values wise and stuff, I think it's pretty darn similar. So there shouldn't be that much difference if you basically like the sound of your SLO module. But anyway, whatever floats your boat. If you've already got it and you're happy, then they're both good. I mean, you know, for sure they wouldn't have put out the first one, but anyways, just looking through your questions here. I tried my IRD into a DR504. Results weren't good. That's interesting. Into a high watt. Like the easiest thing would be to modify the high watt and have a power amp in on it. You know, if there was a way to just get into the power amp and insert, it'll probably sound killer into the 504. But it also, did you try messing with the EQ in all kinds of different ways? There's something called a tone stack calculator online that you can look at and look at what the like kind of the frequency response of what the tone stacks do of various amps, Marshalls, Fenders, maybe high watts in there. Check that out maybe and see if it gives you any info on, because it can be weird. Like on a high watt, it could very well be like, oh, you turn the treble and the bass off, and then you turn the mids all the way up and the presence off or something. It might be that, you know, it's odd EQ settings. Generally it looks weird, but then it flattens the EQ out. And then when you plug it something that's got, you know, low hump and a high hump and that kind of thing, it can sound right then, you know? So, cause I would think a DR504 would actually be one of the better into the normal channel, probably. Not the bright channel. If you plug it in the bright channel, it's probably going to be too, you know, fizzy sounding. So I generally find when I'm using an amp as a power amp, if you've ever plugged your guitar directly into a power amp, it sounds very boring, you know, like right into a tube power amp or something, or even it's just flat and there's no sparkle. It sounds, you know, but that's actually flat and it sounds flat. So you kind of want to make the amp itself sound like kind of dark, kind of a little bloated, sort of very neutral is the only way I can describe it, you know? So the normal channel on an AC30 might work because there's nothing going on. It's literally like a gain stage into the power amp, I think, is all it is, with maybe like maybe there's some sort of low cut or something. I'm not sure. But you know, amp guys out there will know, but that's the kind of sound. Think normal channel on an AC30. It literally doesn't have an EQ, you know, it's just like gain to 12AX7 into a power amp. So, yeah. Do you have any details of 69 Super Lead in the EVH deep dive video? It sounds super aggressive. It was an amp that Dave had. I can't remember if it was his or what it was, but it was around here for a while. I think it was his, and then he sold it, I think, or maybe he still has it. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Dave, but it was basically set up like Ed's, with all the stuff. You know, had the right negative feedback and the fat cap and the various things, and it did sound really aggressive. It was a really good sounding amp. 69s for some reason a lot of times. I mean, it's just a circuit, but there's something about them. Right when they went to the metal panel or just before, it's like those amps can be very aggressive sounding. I think the filtering was starting to get a little stiffer on some of them, and just whatever combination of things, they were loud and brash and aggressive and kind of cool, like that particular era. You know, often, but they're not really that much different than a 68 or, you know, but anyway, it was a cool sounding amp. My thoughts on the orange Pedal Baby 100. I think that's the similar to the device that I did a video for. Let me see. Orange. Let me take a look at it just really quick here. Oh, this thing. Interesting. Right. So it's kind of a pedal power amp, isn't it? And it's class AB. I bet it's pretty darn good. I haven't tried this particular one, but so it's got simple EQ, a volume control, and it's class AB. I think it's probably going to be pretty darn cool. Unlike other units, the Orange Pedal Baby has a class AB push-pull of a classic orange guitar amp. Analog signal path remains neutral and flattering at all outputs. Onboard 2-band EQ. Looks pretty cool to me, to be honest. I bet it'd probably sound really good for my quad Cortex rig. I use a Matrix for that, but it's going to be similar. Generally speaking, I find the class D power amps could sound okay, but they're kind of flat and hard sounding, you know, whereas a class AB power amp that's done right has a more pleasing character. Just kind of like in a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's more like a guitar amp sounding a little less flat. Now, I have good luck with those Seymour Duncans. They sound pretty good. The power stage, they're a class D. It is neat. When you take a class D, like the Amp 1, I think it's called, from Blackstar, Amp 2, I did video for those. And they've got their power amp sort of modeling going on where you can go from the class D sound to, you know, different types of output tubes and the kind of character that they lend. And it is really nice sounding when you switch that in. So anyways, I don't know, there's something to think about, but it looks like Orange has gone at it by doing a traditional kind of class AB power amp and then, you know, having these EQ controls. A big part of it is damping, like the damping of a, because I've messed a little bit with this with solid state power amps. And if they don't have that, they can sort of sound mid-rangey. And the second that you lend some, like there's some damping involved, they get a little more scooped out and have a little bit of a bump in the low end. It's like, oh, that sounds like more like a tube amp. So anyways, maybe they've done that in the Orange or something and built it into the circuit or something like that. But it looks pretty cool to me. It looks like it's not stereo, I don't think. It's just let's see, 100 watts or 70 watts, 16 ohms. Translate your stomping floor. FX to the main stage. Probably be a great thing for something like that IRD, you know, or the Friedman pedal, you know, the IRX. You know, probably be really good for that, to kind of run that into a cab or something, get a sound that's, because that already has some power amp stuff built in. Probably just sound juicy. But anyways, there's Nerd Halen. He says, I use IRX with EVH effects in front and the EQ. H9 after, and last is the Boss EVH delay stereo into the Duncan, into two cabs. And you like it. Yeah, I bet it sounds really good. Because once again, it's okay to have something like the Duncan, a rather sort of flatter, harder power amp, because the IRX actually has some power amp stuff built in to the IR, you know, circuit has got that, which I think is active even if you turn off the speaker IRs. I think the power amp modeling is still working. And it's, what am I trying to say? Why can't I get it out? It's the power amp modeling still on in the IR section, even when you disable the cab sim. That's what I'm trying to say. if you're using the main out, because it gives it a little bit of that juicy power amp feel. So anyways, some questions about in-ears here. Jim says using in-ears. I'll get to those super chats. I see them there. Sorry. I'll get to those right away. But using in-ears for the first time, struggling with my background vocals. Oh, that's interesting. What do you find you don't like? Because usually vocalists find like right away, that's the big advantage is, oh, I can sing easier. Maybe it's just the sound in your in-ears. You might, I mean, many times because of the head voice and stuff, when I'm singing, I mean, I find I gotta mess with the level because it's like your face is resonating your head, and when you plug your ears with in-ears, which is kind of, you're doing that, you're resonating, and getting the level right in the in-ears can be an interesting thing. Like, sometimes singers have them way too loud, and then they sing too quiet, and so it's just a matter of a blend and a balance. ASI 3D-MEs are the ones with the microphones built in. And that's more to get the stage sound, to be able to hear the drums and the guitar and the audience and stuff in a more natural sort of way. But I don't know that it really helps with vocals, because actually you're adding a little more ambient stuff to the sound and a little more, could be, if anything, a little more confusing sounding, I would think. I would say for vocals, probably the least ambience is probably better, maybe. So I don't know that they will be helpful. I think it could be more an issue with your mix. Not that they aren't really fun in other ways, because you can hear the audience and all that. So, which is a whole different level. It kind of makes the live experience more exciting for me. But anyways, so I'm not really sure. I would say just, play with it could be the EQ of your in-ears or the EQ on your vocal. You might want to mess with kind of, trimming some, make sure they're not too fat and that there's too much lows. I mean, the voice kind of exists in the mid-range, make sure that that's prominent and stuff without it being too loud, so that you're not singing. Like if you've got a ton of vocal in the in-ears and you're backing off and you're kind of, then, you're not singing out like you would through. So that's the one mistake I think a lot of singers make, is that they tend to sing a lot more quiet on in-ears, which can be a good thing because it can save your voice, but it's all a balance. If you go too far in that direction, then I find singers start sounding weird and they start pitching strange. They start sounding like they've got some sort of speech impediment. You know what I mean? So it's like a fine line. I don't know. I think people are still figuring it out, and in-ears is definitely an art. It's not just turn it up and down, and then it's like, it'll make you sing different. So when it comes to, I generally on this show, and most of the time just talking to people, I'm always talking about guitar and how it relates to in-ears, but the whole singing and how it relates to in-ears is an interesting, it's a little bit out of my depth. The things that make a great in-ear mix for a singer, I recommended the 3D-MEs to a singer to a singer guitar player recently because of the ambient stuff and how, it was like, well, if you're going to use in-ears and protect your ears and stuff, you might like these because they're fun for guitar. They actually weren't that crazy about the sound of the in-ears themselves, though, for vocals. They were like, I don't know if I can deal with the tone of them, for the way my voice sounds. I thought, this is a lead vocalist I'm talking about. And maybe they like the sound of, Ultimate Ears UE7s, for example, kind of an industry standard 3-driver in-ear. It's been around for years and years and years. They have a mid-forward sound that was supposedly made for guitarists and singers, mid-range, sort of prominent, rich mids was kind of the goal. And I think a lot of vocalists like those, or the UE11s, or, but the UE7s in particular, they had kind of this mid-range, not super high-end and not a ton of bass because they don't have a ton of drivers, but more in the mids, which helps people pitch and kind of hear their voice clearly. So your mileage may vary, I guess, in conclusion, like different in-ears for different things. If singing is your primary focus and wanting to be able to sing great, sound great, and feel comfortable and have great tone and pitch, the ambient thing might not be what you want, So anyways, do you think I can get a mix ready guitar sound by just using interface and IK amplitude? I mean, yeah, it's kind of amazing. Like, Some people use plugins for, I think Satriani's done whole albums with plugins. Probably IK, because I mean he's got a signature IK package. I bet he uses his own. They went and modeled his amps. So there's examples of it. Um, this gear is so good these days. I mean, I feel probably pretty confident I could make a pretty cool record using Neural. Their plugins are amazing. And it would be musical and be, I love doing the other stuff and using my amps and stuff, but that stuff's so good these days. So yeah, and IK is of course closely affiliated with Tone X. Tone X captures, neural captures, they're all pretty darn close. The ability to capture the amplifier and put your own amps into things. So that's the other thing, because you can do that now with IK, with Tone X is closely related to Amplitude. So yeah, mix ready, sure. I think so. I think stuff's good enough these days to, where you could fool people and tell them that you used a stable of vintage amps, and but it doesn't mean like that it's right for everybody, because some people, like, I still love miking amps and getting sounds that way. I still love the challenge and it's also, once you get it, once your mics are in the right position, you get the right gear and it's all set, it's very fast. I can turn everything on and just hit the amp on. I don't want more treble, just go over the amp. Yeah, that sounds good, and then you can be recording in like 5 minutes, So I guess you can do that too with great presets, if you put the time in. It's just a different process. Depends what you're into. Oh, I'm long-winded these days. Long story short, yes, is my answer. 412 approach live when miking a cab. Crank them as a boon to those sitting in the first few rows and thus augment the PA, or instead just let the PA do all the work. Well, the answer is somewhere in the middle. I don't... a 412 in your face isn't a great sound, but as a stage fill, and especially I kind of like the way I'm doing it these days, which is with the plexi panels. I've become a fan of the clear sonic panels like Bonamassa uses, because you can kind of diffuse the amp that way, crank them up, get the amp working, get the speakers working, uncover, like out of a 412, I kind of have I got a clear sonic, but it doesn't cover the whole front of my cabs. I leave the side speaker kind of open. So, it's blowing out the side a little bit, and you get that on one side and then maybe on the other side a little bit. And so the audience gets a bit of that sound, but it's not, I can kind of just cheat the panel and stuff. And you're not getting a full blown 4 speakers in your face. You're kind of getting half of one, but it tends to fill in the sound then and diffuse around and sounds cool. It just seems to work the way that the clear sonic baffles are when you array them just right, but I am not a fan of letting the PA do all the work, especially not these days, because I in the old days of big box PAs, if anybody remembers going to shows in the 80s and the 90s, even before line arrays came in and stuff, you had these big old box PAs on the side of the stage. It was either like bins that were like a sub, a mid, and then a high horn on the top, kind of almost like a triangle you would see in bars and stuff, in smaller venues. And they were on either side of the stage, right, at like stage level, and then they would kind of array and blow out into the front row and everything like that, sound like that. Once line arrays came in, everybody started flying their PAs, even in clubs. You'll see them up mounted with the cabinets and then the subs on the floor. In a club, it's kind of fine generally because it's smaller and the PA is closer and it's not so high because the ceiling, but in big places, big theaters, that kind of show. In a concert, this doesn't matter as much, really doesn't, because it's like you're back from the, there's another 20 feet between you and the audience, or 30 even. And the PA is so huge and, flowing and everything is fine, but like mainly big clubs and theaters, when they fly the PA real high and then they've got these little front fills, those have to be done just right. The front fills, there's those little cabinets, they really only this big, like, and they'll be arrayed along the front of the stage, usually 4 of them, maybe 6, and then you got this flowing PA. Well, you're like, great, I got second row floor right in the middle. Well, all you're getting reflected sound off the PA that's blowing back in the room, and then these little front fills and subs, which are usually somewhere under the stage and stuff. If they do those front fills right, I've learned a little bit about this recently, actually, because my friend Al is a really great sound guy, and he was out doing, he was actually mixing Prince right before Prince passed away. He's that good. So he was mixing Five for Fighting on the tour that I just did, and he was telling me about front fills and how you have to high pass them quite high, like 500, 600 hertz, so that you're letting the subs really do the work, and then they don't phase with the subs and stuff. And it was really interesting, like how high he was going with and when I heard them, when he turned off the subs, and it really just sounded like mid-range and high end coming out of them. But then when he turned on the subs, everything sounded in phase and big, and it was like, oh, that's cool. And you're getting the, yeah. So anyways, if the front fills are done right, I've learned it's cool. But sometimes those front fills are just like, they sound like little speakers to me when I stand out front and listen. They don't really have power, not like a big line array, a proper, VDOS or whatever, JBL or whatever kind of system you've got. When you're back 15 rows back, and the PA is developing a bit and you're in front of it, it can sound really, really great and powerful and all that. If the sound person's good, it'd be great, But when you're up front in those first 10 rows and all you're hearing is those little front fills, and then the PA is kind of blowing by you, and then you get the subs, it can be like, man, it doesn't sound very powerful, And that's where the guitar comes in on stage to me. It's like, at least if I've got some of my cab up there and an SVT and stuff like that, and you're hearing that come off the stage, at least there's some fill in of, because I just don't long story short, I don't really trust the front fills for my guitar sound. Those little cabinets with guitar coming out of them when the PA is blowing over your head and everything, I don't really think that those things, unless they're done just right, or unless the PA is arrayed just right, and maybe if there's some, occasionally you'll see on either side of the stage like some, those like sort of two-way EAW cabinets that have like a 15 and a horn in them or something. You'll see two of those on either side of the stage facing in, kind of at the first few rows. That can be helpful, I find, those to fill in the sound a little bit. And then the front fills. That I always like it when I see those, because it's like, okay, at least there's some of those like kind of filling in for the first few rows. But if I was using nothing but a modeling rig and I saw a super high flowing PA and just a few little front fills, I'd be like, well, guess my guitar is going to sound super wimpy tonight for the first 10 rows. That's generally the way I feel about it. That was a long-winded ass answer there about that, but that's my strong feelings about it, and having been out there doing it and stuff. And you want to this is a way that I think is one last thought on this. And I try and do this now because I try and work with sound guys as much as I can to be like, a team player and stuff like that and be reasonable. I will go jump off the stage as we're playing and go in the first few rows, usually on the first or second song of a sound check, and go listen to my guitar. So I'll walk around and hear, is this biting this person's, like whoever's going to sit in this seat in row 3, I'll stand right in front of my cabs and listen to like how, it's kind of translating. And, the sound guy will look at me sometimes and be like, before they even say anything, they're kind of like, and I'm like, I understand, and I'll go up, and then it can just be a little tweak, like not, come down like the equivalent of 3 or 4 dB on, and they're like, okay, yeah, thank you, and then it's like, because it's a fine line between beamy and unpleasant, and they don't want to put you in the PA, and just fine, and yeah, we can deal with that. That's cool. And then they fill in the PA a bit, and they got your guitar in there, and so you just be realistic about it, go down front and listen and make sure it's not unpleasant, the difference between, yeah, that sounds cool and rock and acceptable and filling in nicely and yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah. Anthony says 10K for an amp shelf. Nice. Well, it was 10K for all. There's a lot of panels that they built. It's those, that, the cloud above my head, 2 more in the corners, 1 more big one on that path wall. And then these 2. Yeah, kind of a lot. I mean, it looks sort of more like 6 to me, but it was 10. But it was a lot of materials, and the guy spent a lot of time. They're all custom made. I mean, the big ones on either side of me are kind of they're monstrosities. You can't see those. They're like on this wall and this wall, and they're big diffusion panels on either side of me that are this thick with insulation in the middle, and then they narrow to this thick, and they're full of, they're just those probably custom panels like that. Those by themselves are probably a couple grand. So. Yeah, it was kind of a lot. One of them actually fell off too. That bummed me out. The big diffusion panel in I was on tour, and I got a call. Was when I had my place in Santa Monica. It was in kind of like a commercial building, and somebody went in my room to check something or do so, because the main people there had keys and stuff, and they went in. They're like, "Hey," and I was in like Europe or something. They called me and they were like, "Hey, something happened in your room." And I'm like, "What? Oh no! Like I'm away. What do you mean something happened?" They were like, "Well, your panel has fallen off the wall. The way it was mounted." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "We don't think it's too bad, but it looks like it sort of tore or something, blah, blah, blah." So anyways, when I got back, it wasn't that bad. The panel had survived and didn't break into a bunch of pieces or anything like that. But the way the guy had mounted them was really not great. And that kind of like, I was sort of like, okay, I didn't have the best feeling about, I got a handyman to come after that and said, "Is there a better way to do this?" And he was like, "Yeah, the way these are mounted was sort of like a ticking time bomb. Like it was like this was bound to happen. The way they were, it wasn't strong enough. The way he put them on the wall." So this handyman came in and he built like a sort of tongue and groove sort of shelf and drilled it into the studs and stuff in the wall so that it was really strong. And now the panel's mounted like so it's just structurally way more. I think this guy that made all this stuff was a little like, he was very confident. I remember that, but he was young and maybe a little out of his depth and overconfident. So I don't know. Oh, but they've served me well for over 10 years now. Leon Todd hosted a great live session last night. He might drop in. Oh, cool. Nice to see him here. You and Leon are the two best gear reviews online. He's really good. Yeah, I like what he does. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Earl. Okay. Can you run a Friedman IRD into the effects return and not use the amps pre? Yeah, that's right, Paul. You can run right into the amp effect return. Then you're basically using your amplifier as a power amp then. That's correct. Yeah. And that's a good way to do it, actually. Any advice to get an early Mick Mars tone? Mick just had a strong, grinding kind of mid-range. Always lots of mids. Don't scoop the mids for Mick Mars tone. The Dr. Feelgood amp that you could listen to the video that I did on it. That'll give you a good indication because it was a Jose Marshall and it had really rich mids. And you'll hear me watch the video that I did on that amplifier. I interview Richard Fortis, who became the owner of the amplifier. And he's like, "Yeah, that amp's special, right? Like 2K. And I'm like, "Yeah, 2K, like mids, like a wide mid forward thing in the upper mids that was just like, like it had this great, big, tough voice. That was not too gainy, but loud and brash and, just mean sounding. It was cool. And then I think Mick went to SLOs after. And that kind of made sense to me, like great big grain distortion, sort of, Ask Richard if you can borrow his old Jose. You can just hear it in that video, and I think he'll get an idea. That video was a really one of my favorite things to make. So, any new Suhr products or projects? Yeah, lots coming of exciting stuff, actually. So I'm really excited about it. It's no secret we've been working on a new amp for a long time. It's going to be really fun. So that'll be. We're still a ways off, but it's the design and the all the features and everything are all kind of set. It might take shape slightly. Might be some modifications or something like that to what we've got now, but it's coming. So that'll be a PT50 coming relatively soon. But and then there's also some more guitar stuff coming, all kinds of neat stuff coming. So I'm really excited. I love working on stuff with those kids. It's a dream come true to be able to come up with ideas about guitars and then have one of the greatest guitar companies on earth help you realize those things. Just go, yeah, okay, and then they make it for you. Are you kidding me? It's like so cool. It's so much fun for me because it's from the beginning that I don't know. I just gel with with them so nicely, because it's all about making things better for musicians, how to fix problems and how to make things, just making great tools for musicians. Like, what if it could be like this instead? Wouldn't this help? And like, I love that, about Suhr. Like, this would make things better if we did. It'd be like similar to what you're used to, but even better, and we get to kind of come up with these ideas and imagine it, and then they bring it to life. It's so much fun for me. Like, so it's not lost on me. I'm like so excited about it. I really enjoy it. Long-time listener, first-time chatter, says Jose. Just got the Plex. Your review was awesome. Any tips on using only the bass channel? Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, using the bright switch, kind of get close to fat JTM 45. Sure. You can easily blend the two channels and try the bright cap. That's the 100 picofarad, which is the first bright setting. You could just use the one channel and try that. Or you could use the, bit of the bright channel with the 100 picofarad and a bit of the normal channel with the 100 picofarad. Or a bit of the normal channel with no 100 picofarad. Just blend them, and you're not far off from that kind of 45. I mean, a 45 has a slightly different tone stack and stuff. Friedman could tell you the differences, but Suhr. But you're really close, basically, anyway. So when you just got that 100 picofarad, but yeah, it's not gonna be exact same sound. But if you just use the normal channel and the first bright cap setting, yeah, you've essentially got a kind of it's a beefier but still clear with that bright cap, great pedal platform kind of setting. So it's a really fun amp, Yep. How do you come up with those gear intro songs? Like, how do you get from nothing to something? Well, that's a little bit of what the clinic is about, Mr. Braxall. It's a little bit about, like, if you've got a tone and what the part that the tone inspires. You know what I mean? Because like a certain kind of tone, like a great example would be edge delays. The sound he gets on Where the Streets Have No Name or something. When you have a drone going and then you move one note around and it's got an 1/8 delay bouncing, or dotted 1/8, you're going to play a certain thing, and a simple thing can take on a new life then and sound, It's almost like acoustic guitar is the hardest thing, because it's all about just the composition and yeah. I was talking with Yvette Young a while ago about, she put a guitar that I had into a alternate tuning, and it's like F, G, something, one of the main tunings she uses or whatever, and it's so much fun because then you play it and it's like none of the notes, or now all your fretboard knowledge has gone out the window with the tuning. And I started playing, and I'm not a great fingerstyle player like she is, but if I just use a pick and move around on the guitar, I was getting it going, I could go here, okay, I could go here, and then you just have to remember the note. Okay, that note sounded cool. You don't know what note it is because it's all out the window, and you're just moving around listening what sounds good. She goes, there, you're me. After I played for a few minutes, I was like, yeah, I see. Like kind of like as soon as you throw the guitar into that alternate tuning, you're coming up with a whole nother world of. So that's the same thing like throwing an effect on, like you put a ring modulator on, or an octave divider, or that's a big part of what I'm going to show in the clinic. So maybe if you can make it to a clinic, the way that the tone and certainly the tuning or those kinds of things can affect. Mike Cree over here is doing some weird things. Sorry, I just noticed one of my APIs is all funky on me. Turn it off. There we go. Let's just turn that off. It's like the meter is like flickering on it and going crazy, and there's nothing plugged into it. So anyways, I got distracted. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's really, I get inspired by tone. That's inspired by the tone. That's the name of the clinic. I get inspired by the sounds of what I'm playing. And, a certain kind of tone will bring out a certain kind of part. And then the other thing is not to edit yourself too much. You have to listen to what you're doing, and not even because, we tend to play the same things over and over again, or, rhythmically in a certain style, or do a certain chord change that we always do or whatever. but you might play that thing that you always do, and it just sounds normal to you or not very exciting. And your friend goes, "Wait a minute, what's that?" You ever have that happen? Where you're playing with somebody else in the room and you play something. They're like, "What was that?" And you're like, "What do you mean?" "That thing you just did, it was so cool." And you're like, "I don't know." Like, maybe you can't remember, or if you do, you're like, "This thing that I do all the time." Um, you have to learn how to sort of almost hear it as a listener as opposed to you doing it. So that you can recognize when you're doing something that no matter how simple it is or how regular it seems to you, it could be a hook or a good, something to build on, an idea to sort of sprout from. So, yeah, hope that makes sense. Have you ever played with a Warm Audio Centavo? Oh, no, I haven't, but I know they did a kind of a Klon clone. I haven't tried that particular one though. I've tried so many different ones, but not that one. Yeah, I've got the Archers and the Unobtainium, and I've got these really nice ones here from Korea. God, man, the guy sent me ages ago, and I should really do a video for. They're exactly like Centaurs, and handmade and incredible. And I feel bad that I haven't gotten around to doing a video for them. I should probably do that. But anyways, the Klon. I do love a good Klon. I do. It's my favorite lead boost, basically. If I could only have one in front of a dirty amp, they just make it's like a more expensive tube screamer, figuratively and literally. The sound is more, as long as you keep the gain down, just to add a little bit of the gain, their overdrive circuit, and then mainly use it as a boost with the treble somewhere between 11 o'clock and noon, maybe, or 1 o'clock. You get this big fat note thing and feeds back and sustain, and it's wonderful. I can't believe Brian May is a rock star, doctor of science, and is also saving badgers and farmers, and he's still rocking at 77. He's a lovely dude. I met him once. He stood on the side of the stage at Hyde Park when Cornell band was opening for Aerosmith, and it was my birthday too. 2007. That was a hell of a birthday. 60,000 people in Hyde Park with Brian May watching you on the side of the stage. It was amazing. But met him, spoke with him for a while afterwards, and he was a lovely guy. Just gentleman and sweet and really nice. And he's one of those guitar heroes that's like Gilmore. You've got your guys like Clapton, Page, Jeff Beck, right? And then you've got the other British players that were like, to me, Gilmore, Brian May, Gary Moore. We could get into some of the guys from, let's include Thin Lizzy, and it's not England, but some of those cats. Who else are good examples of? I guess maybe the great guitar players. Well, certainly, Bloomfield and Peter Green, of course, the ones that people don't talk about quite as much, but that are, these legendary guitar player dudes that are just, you've got your big 3 or 4 there, and then the other guys that are like, right. I mean, they're every bit is incredible in their own way, and I consider Brian May right there as being, and certainly like Brian May, one of the most unique voices on guitar. You knew it was him. He had a signature thing that he just took to the wall, those beautiful, almost like his guitar could sound like a horn or clarinet, a woodwind, or the way he would layer things, and it was just so cool and unique. And then he's got all these other, there's a lot of people like that out there. I mean, you take a guy like Dexter from Offspring, right? Who's like he's an expert in vaccines. Like he's a, what is he? I don't know if he's like a molecular biologist or something, but he's got a doctorate in something, I think. And also flies jets, I went and did some work for Offspring a while ago, and the dude literally showed up in his jet at a hangar. They were rehearsing in a hangar, and he literally, like, you hear this, like jet engine, and the plane pulls around the corner up to the hangar where the punk rock band is set up, and it's like a Gulfstream or whatever, like and the dude literally gets out and goes, okay, let's start. Let's rehearse. Like just flew there himself. Amazing, these people, incredible, really interesting. I love the idea of the sort of very high functioning rock star that has other interests and stuff and is able to, maybe do other things as well as sing, play, and write, as well as sing, play, and write, as well as they do. It's interesting. Thanks for the intro on the IRD. This is Jeff. I'm looking at going into the front of my ombre. Oh, well, I would probably try the left inputs, the kind of the normal channel or whatever. I don't know if there's I don't know the design of the ombre exactly, but I would say that the more neutral isn't one channel, maybe more neutral than the other one. I'm not sure, but anyways, try those left inputs and just try and set the EQ on like 5 and 5. Is there, I can't remember on an ombre if there's full EQ on that channel. I think there is. Experiment with that and see how it sounds. It may or may not work. It may sound kind of weird, or it might sound good. Experiment how high you set the output and then the volume on the amp, the master or whatever on the IRD. Because if you hit the front end of the amp too hard, it could be weird. You might have to keep it lower than you might think. So the phase inverter, PI, phase inverter, that was in the Dr. Z module will only be for the Dr. Z, says Peter. I don't think so. I think they're experimenting with it in other modules for Synergy, but you could kind of look at the stuff that doesn't have lots of gain, which would be the stuff that'll benefit the most anyway. But the lower gain stuff will be the ones that like Plexi, Voxy designs that you can kind of do that in, because there's enough gain stages to do it. The second you need more gain stages for more sort of preamp gain stages, you lose the ability to do the phase inverter thing. So yeah. Okay. But yeah, we'll see what else they come up with. I don't think it'll be just that one. If you can only pick one of these Neural DSP plugins, the Nolly or Gojira, which one will you take? I would probably go Gojira. Nothing wrong with the Nolly one, is really cool too. I think it's a little more maybe, but although it is a little more maybe straightforward, the Nolly one. I've played with it very little though. So, but I seem to remember it's a little more meat and potatoes, and then the Gojira one's a little more like not wacky, but a little more like signature metal, like with interesting, like the effects are a little more tweaky and a little less sort of meat and potatoes. So if you want one that's a little more basic, go for the Nolly one. That's like a little more straight up the middle, and the Gojira one a bit more extreme. Yeah. Music Life with Arthur says, I fired up my old Line 6 DT50 the other day. I forgot how stupid awesome that thing sounds. Have you ever checked one out? Not really. The DT50 that's not the one they did with Bogner, is it? It's sort of the more vintage looking one. I don't really. Yeah, I remember the amp. Yeah, I'm reading people's comments about it. First-rate tube amplifier with a wide variety of sounds at a fair price. Cool. Don't know that much about it. Never really played through it, to be honest. Got a Mr. Scary mod for my twin sister. Works gloriously. Can keep the articulation of the low gain mode, but get Jose mod like gain tones. Cool. Yeah, that's a Legendary Tones. It's like a tube module. I've done videos for the Scary version as well as the sort of the original version of it, and they are really cool. And you put them in a kind of they fare best in a JCM 800 style amp, but that's kind of not too dissimilar from a Dirty Shirley in many ways, I guess. And like they can work in a plexi, but it's gonna be kind of loud, but it can work and sound good too. Just plexis don't have a master, so it's gonna be a loud, gainy, situation in that amp. But the 800, they were really kind of originally made for an 800 2203 2204 style circuit, and they are great for adding a gain stage and getting almost like it's a cheap way and a way that you can return the amp to stock. You're not doing anything to it, you're sticking it in the tube socket. So neat to experiment with. I like it. I like the idea of it because it's like kind of experimenty in the way, like, back in the 80s, people used to mess with stuff and mod things and do weird sort of, it's a little jerry rig, but it's kind of cool in a way because that's how I kind of grew up in that era of people doing stuff like that. And then, so yeah, kind of neat. Jack something into the front of your amp and say, ooh, there's a unique tone. A la Brian May or Richie Blackmore, or, whether it's a boost or a slight mod or whatever, kind of neat. I wonder if the Bandexol tone stack is pretty much in every amp. No, I don't think so. It's kind of a unique tone stack that exists in only a few amps that I know of. That's not like a Vox, is it? Is that kind of that tone stack? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. But the Vox is unique in like my top hat. Like if you turn up the, in a Vox, like where you turn up the treble and the bass and then you start losing gain at some point, especially with the treble, it starts thinning out and getting, yes, brighter, but also like the mids kind of scoop out and it does a weird thing. So like the most sort of like balanced tone you get on the amp is with the bass and the treble below 5, I kind of around 4. You bring up the treble, it scoops out the mids a bit and gets brighter and a little more jangly, but less. It's like it's bright and full on 4, and then it gets bright and thinner on 6. And it's doing weird things to the EQ curve. I still have an amp. I want to pull this thing out at some point, maybe do a video on it or something, because it's here. I've had it for 25 years at least, but the maybe more. The THD Flexi 50. Anybody remember that? It had a Bandexol tone stack in it. It's basically it's an amp that can run any output tube. You can bias it very easily, and you can use 606s or 6550s or EL34s or KT88s, whatever you want to throw in it, you can throw in it, and it'll work. And I don't even remember what I've had in it, and I haven't turned it on for probably 20 years, but it's in the other room. So one of these days I should get it in here. And it's got kind of a cage over the top of it, and you could pull the cage off and easily replace the tubes. And kind of a neat amp, and it did sound good. I remember it was really good and kind of Marshall-y, like sort of had a driven Marshall kind of thing. So I should do a tune sometime and just use all my old amps. Everything I've had for over 20 years I should use. I've got an old Bassman I've had for like 20 years. That's 66 or 7 or something. I've got my THD Flexi 50. I've got my original top hat Implexidor that I've had since like 2000, so 2001 maybe. I should do a tune where I use all those amps. C-Post says your hair's looking sick. It's growing, man. It's getting there. Only taken like 2 years to get here. It takes a long time, man. If you get an undercut or something, it's like, and you're like, I think I'll grow it long. Just look forward to 2 years. I swear it's been that long that I've been like, I should grow this out at least 1.5 years. Crazy. But thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm digging it these days. I'm liking it. I'm going to let it go another, I don't know, inch or two. Another 6 months. Let's see what happens. Granddaddy Pete, or Good Day. I thought it said Granddaddy. Granddaddy Pete. I was like, nobody's ever called me that, but I'll take it. But no, it says Good Day Pete. No, it's going to become a thing, isn't it? What's up, Granddaddy? I'm getting there. So, as somebody who bounces between using real amps and digital modelers, can you tell us what you think the difference is? Oh, Well, yeah, the difference is, what the main difference is in the way they're used. Because a lot of the differences can disappear, and I say this as a really fan of tube amps. A lot of the differences can disappear once you just start pumping them through cabinets. So the way people use a digital monitor is generally direct, and the way people play an amp is generally through a guitar cabinet, and that colors a lot of people's opinions. Because like the way that an amp sounds through a studio monitor or through in-ears or whatever is sort of very akin to the way a digital modeler sounds through in-ears or whatever. But when you bring the cab into the room and you get the cab bouncing around and those physical effects of the cab interacting with the walls and the floor and everything, that is what so much of us sort of, that's our experience playing guitar is that sound. When you put it all right here or something, or just through studio monitors, that seems very foreign to a lot of people. So when I realized that, and I realized that there's two things at play when you decide to go to a modeling rig. It's like, you've now taken the tube amp out of the equation, but many times you've also kind of taken the guitar speaker cab out of the equation, just because you don't necessarily need one. You can go direct and use the PA, but without sounding like a broken record and going over everything I went over earlier, it's not always conducive to getting the best guitar sound live or to delivering the audience the best tone for the reasons of eliminating the cab and all that. So when I did it, I went with let's send some IRs to the PA, and let's also still use a cabinet by integrating a power amp and a speaker cab. And I find that gives me the much closer version of what I'm used to, Now, all things equal, I think that the ease of use thing is a major factor. So like, in other words, I want more volume. There, I did it on the amp. I want more volume on, I got to get in the menu, and how do I do that? Even if it's just a step or two further where you hit a button and then turn up a digital pot, it doesn't feel as the same. And that is a major difference. So, Fender, I think, has a winner with their, digital versions of their classic amps. You can now, of course, buy a modeling version of a deluxe reverb or of a super, and they weigh nothing. They're very light and they look the same as the old amps, and they only do one sound, and they're very simple. And that was a really interesting gamble and sort of, I think, a successful move. I don't have sales figures in front of me or anything, but they're making them, and then people seem to use them, and you do see them out there. And when you go in a store and you look at the two sitting beside one another, here's the tube one, here's the modeling one. Oh, this one's way less expensive and it's lighter. And most people, they plug in and go like, I don't know, sounds really similar. Like, I'll take the cheaper one that's light. Kind of, brilliant. Now, it's only the folks that were really diehard tube people that probably go the other way and can hear the differences, or if they're, whatever the differences are and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that it's all, there's a reason that I still use tubes, and, the reason that I came up with the PT15, because it was like really my idea of trying to do both things in one. Let's give people what they want about the digital thing, the ability to go direct if they want, silent, the versatility, the ease of recording, ease of playing live, no microphone needed, all those things, and we'll put it in a tube amp, and make it simple enough, but versatile enough that it gives just about anybody the tones they need. That was the whole idea with the PT15. And I feel like we were really successful with it. So, there's in the metal world and indie rock, and there's plenty of people out there that don't want to know anything about modeling amps still. And I think it'll always kind of be that way, I guess we're sort of like the Harley Davidson riders of, I don't know. Like I met a guy yesterday. It was really interesting. He had an electric Harley, and I guess they only made them for 1 year. And it looked cool. It was like this little Harley I was like, that bike's electric. Look at the battery interesting. Never seen one. And he came out. We were at a coffee shop in Pasadena, and he came out and started chatting with him about it. And he goes, "Yeah, I guess they've got it. They, it was so unpopular with Harley people. You know, the idea of Harley making an electric bike. You know, that they decided to rebrand their electric division. So they've got a different name now. I can't remember. It's a light something or other or something. I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, this was the only year that they made the bike. It's Harley Davidson, and it has even like a traditional looking gas tank on it. You know, but you can see it's and I was just quizzing him. I was like, oh, what's the range? And like, you know, it was so interesting to me. But there you go. You know, he fully embraced it, and it's kind of similar, I guess. I guess we're like you know, they'll both get you from A to B and do the job. One's really noisy and, and does the thing, and it's like the whatever, you know, and then the other one's super high tech, and they're both valid and cool. You know, I don't know. It's interesting, but. How are Engle amps? You know, the Engle stuff that I've seen, I get it, and I kind of like it. I mean, I think they're. I know Friedman really likes them too. He says they're really nice guys and good people, and you know, German-based company, and they seem to do things a little different, and their amps seem to sound really quite good to me. Like I got nothing bad to say, that's for sure. I don't have a lot of experience with them. You don't see them in America that much, but they're a major brand in Europe. And my main experience would be with the Synergy modules. So the Synergy Savage module, that's an amp that they make. They've got a module version of it for Synergy. Really like it. Like it's got a great tone that's not Marshall. That I feel like, oh, kind of made me think like this right here for Synergy is a good, almost like advertisement, because it's like you can get, you know, a lot of things if they're Marshally can sound similar, you know. A plexi module compared to a B, compared to I mean, they're all variations on that Marshall thing. They're all really cool and valid, but it's a lot of sort of similar architecture. For some reason, the Savage sounded different to me, almost in the way like a rectifier does. You know, it's got its own, like, oh, that's a different distortion tone. So like what I've heard from them, you know, and they obviously have some good endorsers, and I think Vivian Campbell, and didn't he use Engle? And wasn't it Richie Blackmore or something? Didn't he have a signature with them? I don't know. Anyways, Steve Morse, I think. So serious guitar players. I got super chats I got to get to here, like this one right here. That's from Paul. A couple non-related opinions. Ever try the Celestion Gold? I know that's what it always corrects it to. Celestion Gold. Yes. Thoughts on Suhr singles versus V60 versus 63. Also, yes, I should have mentioned that right off the bat. James Tyler passed away after, I think, a fairly, you know, long illness. So sorry to hear that. Great guitar builder. Obviously unique, interesting designs that, you know, wasn't afraid to be bold and stuff with his headstock, and, you know, his name up there. A lot of amazing guitar players. I mean, everybody from Landau to, you know, a lot of great players used Tyler. So I was sorry to hear about that. Celestion Gold I had in a cabinet with a V30 that I lost years ago. It was in London and I never saw it again. Long story, but it was a Bogner oversized 212, and it was a really good sounding cabinet. It had an old V30 in it and a gold, and I loved that blend. And so I did like it. It sounded really good. Basically, it's, you know, I think it's similar to a blue, but higher power. It was the original higher power Alnico before they did the cream and everything. And, you know, I love the blue, love the cream, Alnico cream. It's a really good sounding speaker. So, I might even like them more than the low power versions, you know, because I find like a new Alnico blue can sound they can be bright, you know, and so maybe it's the higher power and maybe a little stiffer or something like that. But the cream sounds really good. And I remember the gold sounding good too, like in a similar way. It's a lot of tone and nice Alnico kind of, you know, they do this slight compression thing. That's cool. The Gold 10 is lovely. It's a great sounding speaker. So if you need a good 10-inch or like to replace, say, you know, 10-inch speakers in a basement or something, you know, or super reverb, Nice option. Thoughts on Suhr singles, V60 versus 63? You know, I've used both. I have the V63 now, which is because that was originally the pickup that started out as the Landau, and the Landau Standard was a pickup that John recommended to me a long time ago, and that's what the V63 is now, and I just really like it. And so that's what I use in my signature guitar. Now, I also have a classic that has V60 LPs in it. I don't know how different they are, like the V60 LP to a V63. I want to say the V60 LP is greasier sounding, maybe not like maybe it's hotter, or maybe just look at the spec right now. Let's take a look and see. Suhr V60 LP. I'm going to take a look because I'll be able to tell from the just the spec. They recreate the classic single coil sounds of the 60s. This is a V60 and LP, wound using a proprietary winding process that replicates the hand-wound pattern of some early 60 single coil, which has a natural roll-off on the top end. So there you go. There it is. That's what I heard. Sweeter and rounder highs. So it's going to be a little warmer sounding, a little greasier in the mids, especially the LP version. Yeah. And they're all Alnico 5. And they've got varied. So the middle, yeah, it's quite hot. 7.2K. That's pretty hot for a single. That's the bridge. So 6.3 neck and 6.3 middle, reverse wind, reverse polarity, 7.2 bridge. You know, that's a pretty beefy 60s single coil for sure. So that's V60. I think that's the V60. Let's take a look at the LP version. The LP version, also the same. That's interesting. I wonder what's different about it. These pickups use the same magnets that we're using. The pickups are in the era. I don't really know. They don't really specify on the website. Maybe there are more turns, but they just come out to the same ohms. So they're also 6.3 for the bridge in the middle and 7.2 for the bridge. But I think the LP stands for low peak, which means that I think the resonant peak is going to be different. It's going to shift a little lower, which is going to give you a little bit of a different mid-range character. Upper mids is going to shift into a different range. So I would say the V60 has got probably a little brighter, and the V60 LP is probably going to sound a little more mid. I could be wrong. You might want to confirm this with somebody else, but the LP stands for low peak, moves that peak. Imagine an EQ with the, bump in the top end, or upper mid really, into the treble, but then that shifts a little lower. So instead of boosting maybe, whatever 3K, you're boosting 2.3 or something. You know what I mean? And it just changes the tone of the pickup a little bit. So now let me take a look at the V63. I think it's going to be a little less hot, is what it is. V63 wound have the same tonal characteristics as those found by John Suhr in a particularly sweet 1963 S-type guitar. I didn't know that. Guitars made by the same company. Oh yeah, the magnets. So they get, this is one thing about Suhr is they get their magnets from the same company that Fender did in the 60s. And John's very specific about that. Oh, the ohms are okay. So for the neck and the middle, 6.4, almost exactly the same. Not that is the output or the winds. I don't understand all that stuff, but you can end up with so there's 6.4 for the neck and the middle. It could technically be a lower output pickup than the other ones, though. I've never quite understood that. But John always says don't go by the ohms as far as the output of the pickup. It's not necessarily a direct correlation there. V63 bridge is 6.4, so they don't have a hotter one for the bridge. It looks like it's the exact same pickup as the neck in the middle. I must say their website looks beautiful. I haven't looked on the Suhr website for their pickups recently. They've done a really nice job. The pictures of the guitars are lovely. I'm getting distracted here. I got to remember I'm doing a show. If you haven't checked it out. But anyways, my memory of it, just my tone, I have to go listen to them back to back, but which is hard to do because you kind of need the same or very similar guitar. But just when I heard the V63, John recommended it because I remember what it was. My Strat has one in the neck. So my old Strat had a really, John measured it, and it had a very, very low peak. So a darker sound. Where the hell is my Strat? There it is. And I always felt like this Strat I love because it's got a real warmth to it. This is my 63 that you've seen me play. Sorry, 64. Excuse me. I had to look at the headstock and see the odd placement of the logo to remind myself it's not a 63, it's a 64. So the neck pickup in this guitar is a Suhr V63, and that I have the old one, but I was always like, it's a little dark. It's kind of dark sounding. John, like, try my V63. It's going to open up the top end a little bit more. Okay. And sure enough, it's just about right. I love the sound of this pickup in this guitar. So it's the two original Fender pickups and then the Suhr V63 in the neck. Yeah. And so when I heard this in this guitar, then I was like, maybe I should try that pickup in my other Suhrs, because I'd always used the V60 LPs and thought it was quite cool, like a nice pickup. But so then because it sounded so good in this guitar, I shifted and went to it. So that's that. Ever played with a GR? Thanks for the super chat, by the way, Paul. Appreciate it. And all you guys for your super chats today. Keeps the coffee flowing. Just delicious. Ever played with a Roland GR55 guitar synth? I think I've had that one here. Did I make a video of it? I don't know. I want to say that I did. A GR55. Let me see. Roland GR55. Oh, the older one. I haven't tried this particular one. I've tried newer versions. Maybe they were called a GR1000 or something. But this one's an older one. On the Roland side, it says it's a revolution in guitar synthesis. A revolution in guitar synthesis. Thuffer and Thuckatash. They still make it, looks like. Still sell it. I thought this was an older version, but I don't know. Yeah, it's got the old style big Roland buttons on it, like they used to have on the GP8 or whatever. I've made videos for some of the other synths, the simple pedal one, and I think the GR1000 I did a video for. I did a GR1000. I did it with that synthesizer guitar from Ireland. I forget all the videos I make, man. But anyway, it had a Roland synth output on it, and I happen to have that. I think that's what it was for. It was for this synth guitar from Ireland, and then I used the GR1000 or whatever in the video, so you can hear me mess with it. But I'm not like a huge, synth guitar guy, as aren't most people. My old friend and amazing guitar player and longtime teacher from when I was a kid, Brian Hughes, he's an expert in that stuff. He was doing the Roland guitar synth stuff. He's got an old 70s Strat, Sunburst Strat, and it had the heck or whatever the pickup, the synth pickup in it. This is in 1983 or 2. He had that pickup in there, and he still uses that stuff, and he gets some pretty amazing, cool sounds. So, it's like whatever floats your boat. It's kind of amazing. I mean, you can get into these things and they can become your thing. Yeah. How much longer till somebody puts the amp and model and cab technology into the guitar itself? Probably exists now. It's like you could just put a pod mini or something in the back of a guitar and just, I don't know, make it Bluetooth switchable with a foot pedal so that you could switch the sounds with your feet that are actually in your guitar. And it's not a bad idea. Fender should just make a Strat with a pod built in, or like their Mustang or something built right in, their modeling thing. Do you still have a Friedman PT20 version 2? I do have one. Yeah. Ended up scoring a version 1. Either love it or it's just a little underwhelming. I wonder if you can mod it into the new version. Not really sure if Dave does that or not, but you could ask him. It does have a ripping sound, kind of a Jose kind of thing. Like it's a great little fire breather, sort of exciting sounding little pissed off amp. Yeah. Yeah. What dry wet question? Running a UA Starlight and Golden set all wet. You're all wet. When I turn off the effects, I get dry to my dedicated wet amp. I'm running a UA Starlight and Golden set all wet. When I turn off the effects, I get dry to my dedicated wet amp. Oh, so you want it to do a mute thing? Trying to figure. Can you tell me a little more about the routing? Because yeah, I think you might need to use a switcher for what you're doing. You might need to use like a mixer. Just thinking about this. When I turn off the effects, yeah, it's just going to bypass the effect because that's what it's designed to do in those pedals. You would, yeah, you're turning the mix all the way up is what you're doing, right? But it's not, they're not really meant to be used like that. You could get around this by using something like the Musicom Lab Parallelizer, because it's got a pot, which gives you some level control over each effect. And it's also got an on-off switch. So by turning off the on-off switch on the parallelizer, you would be shutting down that sound altogether to get rid of the effects. So you could do that. Check out the parallelizer by Musicom Lab. I think it'll solve your problem. Just by you know what I'm saying? It's like you're then routing your, and you could, the parallelizer, you've also got a dry through that, you know, I use in mine because I like dry in my wet cab, but it sounds like you don't want that. So you would have the dry off, which you've got a switch for, and also a separate pot for. Blend it at whatever level or have it off altogether. And then you'd have your two effects with separate switches, and you could just turn those off, and then it'll just cut the signal altogether. So that's one way to go. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wish the text was a little bit bigger on the screen for my crap eyes. Might have to do that. Just reading through your comments and stuff. What's the big difference between Thornbucker and the Thornbucker 2? Magnets. So, and also strength. So a regular Thornbucker is about an 8.3 or 4K affair. Just talking about bridge pickups. The Thornbucker Plus is about 8.7. The Thornbucker 2 is 9K Alnico 2. So the magnet in both the Thornbucker and Thornbucker Plus is a 4. It's going to be a little more top end. A 2 is going to be a little rounder, a little spongier on the bottom end, a little rounder on the top end, and it's got a little more whines. So they're all within spitting distance of output-wise, but slightly different sound on all of them. The original Thornbucker I always recommend to folks, like if you want a PAF and a Les Paul, you know, it's great for that. If you've got a super strat or something and you want to have a kind of PAF, but maybe just a bit more nuts, then I go Thornbucker Plus. If you want the kind of, you know, 78 sort of thing, the a little more like, but with our wind, which is a slightly offset and stuff like that. That's the Thornbucker 2, Alnico 2, a little bit of that, you know, packed the coils, slight offset, cool, you know, Van Halen 2 situation. Let's see here. Jim says, I seem to sing better with more ambient sound. Oh, it's interesting. We'll check out volume EQ of intermix. You know, the other thing with the, you're talking about the, this is going way back about an hour ago, where we're talking about the ASI ambient in-ears. The other thing you've got is an EQ in there. So in the software, you can, there's a limiter, there's EQ and stuff. You can go in there and play with it. So play with that, and, you know, maybe change the EQ around, add a little bit of ambience, and you can change the EQ for your singing voice and maybe dial it in. So yeah, give them a go. What amp did you use on the Five for Fighting tour? I used my quad Cortex. So in the PA, you're basically hearing the quad. But on stage, I use 2 Suhr 112 cabs and a Matrix power amp to power them, to give me a bit of juice on stage and to be able to get some feedback and have a bit of guitar sound on coming off the stage. Yeah, I'm very happy with that setup for that band. Yeah. Yeah. Arthur says, I never liked in-ears because I love the sound of the crowds. It's not the same. Yeah, with the ASI, it kind of solves that. It's still not quite the same as having nothing in your ears, but you can turn up those the mics and get all the ambience, really. So it kind of sounds like it's sort of like wearing AirPods in transparent mode. It's like you can hear the outside world, but you've also got the sound in your ears. That's the closest thing. It's very similar to that sound, actually, I find. Anybody else? I've talked about the ASI for years, with the ambient, and then, you can blend that in. And now that there's AirPods out there, everybody seems to have them. It's that sound, basically. It's like using AirPods in transparent mode, where you can walk around, hear everybody's conversation, you get all that, but then you also get whatever's pumping into the headphones, your music or whatever. It's very similar. Very, very similar. Which begs the question, could you just use AirPods for in-ears? I say no, probably, because of the Bluetooth. There's probably a bit of delay and might be a little weird trying to play guitar through those. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Bluetooth audio is always a little... But I do love my AirPods. God, have you guys tried AirPod Pros? They're amazing, man. I use them every day now, like for all kinds of stuff. Really, really fun. I've talked about them before in here, but Arthur says, your stage volume is perfect. You can hear the guitar clean, but it's not fighting the mix. Thank you. Yeah, I really put time into making sure, venue dependent, that it's not too loud coming off the stage, but just right. I always say match it with the snare drum. If you can stand up front, you can hear the snare standing 12 feet back or 15 feet back, and you can hear the guitar, and they're about the same. Cool. It's like then the PA can just fill in around that, That's the right volume. Yeah. Okay. There's an excellent video out there talking about PA systems over the decades. Starts in the 60s. Oh, I'd love to see that, Joe. Can you find it and maybe send me a link? Because I find that fascinating. Like, I really am fascinated by the era of the development of PA, like, the Beatles at Shea Stadium, couldn't hear anything and all that, and then to fast forward to 1974 and we have full PA systems. So, and it's not that, it's like 8 years apart, and there's full blown Grateful Dead happened in the middle, of course, with their wall of sound and all that, but kind of crazy. There's a Dylan with a super chat. Let's get to that. Thanks for your super chats, guys. Keeps the coffee flowing. Can you talk about any pros and cons about running live parallel effects? I'm torn between simple and loving some of the combination of sounds with parallel. The main thing I notice is that I can use more effect and maintain my clarity. Like, so even with not a wet, dry, wet, like I'm using parallel mixer and everything's coming out of the same cabinet. And I feel like I can pile on the delay and there's still punch, like the dry signal. I don't know what it is, but something about maintaining that analog dry path and the immediacy of it. It just sounds richer with the effects. Like, you can get more effect blended without it washing out your tone. I don't know why, but I just feel like I can. Maybe that's just the nature of the SD 3000 as well from Roland that I'm using from Boss, the EVH pedal, because that's my main delay now live. But it's really great. Like and then if you blend in a little bit of pitch or a little bit of via H90 or something, or some reverb, some crazy like black hole in the H90 or something, some rich, it's like you can get more of it going and still you have your dry signal there that like never gets converted through a converter or whatever. It sounds great. So it's about the clarity and the richness of the effects. It's just a little more 3D and clear sounding at the same time. Yeah. Front fills need that specific mix to pass through the mix really sweet. Yeah, I think so. I do. Yeah. What's this? I've done these as well. Pierogies, hot pockets. You guys talking about pierogies and tamales? I love you guys are having a whole separate food conversation in the chat. That's good. Excellent. Do I have next door neighbors? Everybody has next door neighbors unless you live on a farm or in the woods. I'm quite isolated in this room, which is nice. So I don't have anybody that's super close to me here. I can do whatever I want in this room, basically. It's pretty great. Looking for cork sniff and AC30-ish amps. What are your favorite? Yeah, top hats are sleepers and they're really good value. So I got to say, if you're looking for a nice AC30, but you're like, I don't want to spend like $6,000, it kind of can't beat a King Royale. That's the truth, They're really, really great sounding and really reasonably priced for what they are. They're a point-to-point, tag board, I guess. So, uses kind of a unique board, but it's it's not a PC board affair or whatever. It's you know what I'm saying. Built like an old Marshall or something. And he's got a great ear and just the way he tuned them in and everything. But it's basically an AC30, so it's really cool. Matchless, cool. It was kind of its own thing. One thing I would have loved to hear is a matchless through Alnicos, like two Alnico creams. Because they always did this kind of interesting blend of speakers they'd use ceramic magnet speakers. And to me, that made a difference I'm pretty sure that's what they used. I want to say they used an H30 and then something else in there. But anyways, the DC30 is a classic amp in its own right, or what was it called? The SC30. And they were really great, kind of, in that AC30 vein, but they had their own thing going on. I never owned one, but did hear them a lot back in the day. They were one of the original boutiques, but I always thought the top hat was actually closer to an AC30. Cork sniffing. I mean, you could get an old AC30, you might want to just look for an old one that's, mid to late 60s, even into the 70s. If it's, I think one of Tom Petty's main ones was a 70s one. So, look at all those. But there was other ones, there was JMI, Hayseed, these different ones. But I knew Top Hat. I knew Brian. I used to go over to his shop when he was here in La Habra. We're in Fullerton for a little while. And, he taught me a lot about tube amps back in the 90s. And I learned quite a bit from him. And I was just, people that used his amps had great sounds. And I love the one I have here. It sounds terrific. So I will say, oh my God, it's got a lot of ghost notes. When I use it now, it's like I was doing a session last week and I was playing a certain part and it was like, it's too much ghosting for this part. Like when I was playing on the second string or the third string and the gain's getting up there to be in the amp, the ghost is almost as loud as the fundamental note. And you know what ghosting is? It's like an amp with low filtering and stuff. And maybe it's the no negative feedback, or maybe it's just the filtering. But anyway, when you play a single note and usually up around the G and the B strings, up around the 12th or fret or so, you can hear a second note underneath, and it's got nothing to do with it's not always in tune, is the point. So anyway, my Top Hat has a lot of that, and AC30s do, vintage Marshalls with low filtering do, but this particularly a lot of ghosting. So that was the only downside. But I could always mess with the circuit a little bit and try and get some of that out of it, but I just use it for what it is. Yeah. Do you have neighbors sharing your walls? No. You mean in this facility? No. I don't. Let's see what else we got here. Pete and Sean Tubbs are brilliant demoers. Thanks. Sean Tubbs can play circles around me, but that dude's amazing. He's good times. Great guitar player. Yeah. What else we got here, guys? Any new guitar signature models? Working on something really fun. So, we just recently did the Floyded version of my signature guitar. So that's out now, but we're always looking towards the future and stuff. And I love that guitar. That thing's kind of become my main thing, because it's just so fun. I actually got a little more into something interesting, like the D-Tuner, which I never really, sometimes I'm guilty of not reading the instructions, but I've learned a little bit about D-Tuners. D-Tuna. The D-Tuna is designed to not really be used with the fine tuner for the low E. Had I read the manual originally, I would have realized that, because I always found them difficult to keep in tune when I went from E to D, but you're not really supposed to use the fine tuner. Oh, okay. And when you don't do that, so in other words, when you tune the low string, and if your nut is set up just right, you tune the low string and then you lock it. And you want to get that as close as you can, almost like the old original Floyd, where you didn't have a fine tuner, stretch the string real good, get it stretched out, tune it up like crazy to the D, the note D. So with the D tuner out like that. Right? Now I'm a little off. So if I want to make this perfect and I want to demonstrate this properly, let me see. Turn on my pedal board. I need my tuner. Gotta do this right. Gotta do this right. If you're gonna show it for God's sakes. All right. I get the pick. Turn on my tuner under my desk. Let's tune. Tune the A string. Oh, it was really the A that was out a little bit. E is maybe a hair flat. Guitar went a little short. Things change. Cools off at night. Pretty good tuning. I don't know if you guys can hear that. You probably can. So now I've locked the low. Now, if I put the D-Tuner in, it's a little sharp. Pretty good. Acceptable. So the deal is, I'm sticking the D-Tuner in and out. Right? And the deal is that if you don't use the fine tuner, you barely need to do the little set screw fine tuning on this. So for those that don't know, this thing has a little set screw on it, and it just pops in and out of the saddle and changes and it's what it's designed to do is actually be perfect without any kind of adjustment. Goes in and out, goes from E to D, but there's this little set screw on the side. And so you tune the D with it out, stick it in, and then if it's a little bit out of pitch, you go in and you just turn the set screw a little bit and adjust it when it's in the E position. Just a little bit with an Allen key. And it's a little finicky, you need to do it kind of, I find on at least an every 3 days basis is fine tune. It's a little finicky. But if you want one guitar that'll do drop D and everything, there's nothing else like it out there, right? It's pretty cool. So that's it. So anyway, long story short, not supposed to use the fine tuner on the low E. So old school, pretend it's 1982, tune the hell out of it, make sure it's really in tune, and then lock this down, and you shouldn't ever have to use the fine tuner. If you want to use the D-Tuner, you kind of can't. It won't work. So there you go, D-Tuner lesson. I didn't realize. I thought you could use the fine tuner. It was supposed to work. I'm stupid sometimes. There's Chris. I have a Soldano for years. Just still not sure what you mean by big grain distortion. So that's just how do you describe sound? It's difficult sometimes. But to me, a Soldano has this coarser sort of distortion than a Marshall, which is a little smoother in the top end. And when I think about it, I think it's kind of like fine coffee versus coffee for a French press, which is bigger. You can't, the grind. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know how else to describe it. It's grindier. It's like the space between the distortions bigger. It's trying to describe sound, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But to me, a Marshall has a little bit of a, like when you're playing chords, a Soldano just has this bigger grind kind of tone. It's grindier. Marshall a little smoother. Does that make sense? I don't know. I don't know if it does or not. Anybody else agree? People think I'm way off base. Did you ever spend time learning the later Van Halen record Sammy area like you did the early? I would say no, actually. And I feel like it's a kind of untapped for me. Like I should go through and learn some of that because there's some really cool stuff there and different Eddie licks, and he was doing other stuff. But I just always resonated a little bit more with the Dave era stuff. But I loved the Sammy stuff. I mean, I bought all those records, and that was really when I was getting into guitar hardcore. And I enjoyed it. I remember Live Without a Net, and then when OU812 came out and everything. I just it was a little more meat and potatoes in the Sammy years, as far as the type of songs and stuff like that. I felt like the quirky of the early, it resonated with me. Dave is obviously really eccentric in his own ways, and that mixed with the kind of big American rock thing and Eddie's unique musicality, like it just kind of was very interesting to me. It became a little more pop metal or pop rock or something in the Sammy years, but they still had crazy cool stuff. It was just lyrically a little bit more not as quirky and stuff. Sammy's an amazing singer in his own right, and he's got his own thing, but yeah, I don't know, bands are chemistry. So that's part of why I just didn't get as into it as I did those earlier records, were just they were such an interesting band, to me. People that don't get that are funny. People that think that Van Halen is just sort of like party rock or something. It's like, listen to Dirty Movies or something, and how unique that is, like, dude, the whole middle section, the solo, just the quirkiness of it, and the slide, and the way the riffs move, and then Dave's crazy lyrics and stuff, and it just has such a vibe and a mood to it. But you Van Halen fans out there know what I'm talking about, It also depends on your age, For Andy Wood, I think he was a real Sammy era guy, and he's just probably a little bit younger than I am, and so that was what he heard for primarily, I think I made it to a Dave era show. I was at the 1984 tour, and I was already super into it by then and digging into the past. It was so, so I was hooked by that, already. So anyways, you are living your dream, drinking lots of coffee, talking about guitar. You're right. I should be thankful, and I am. You're amazing at developing this stuff. Thank you. I appreciate it. The innovations we are getting in music gear is astounding. Thanks. I don't really care about anything else as much. It's so much fun for me. So I guess that is find what you love and then do that. I've been fortunate enough to do that. Found a great deal on a Bella yesterday, says Mark. Beautiful sounding amp paired with your PT15212 as dual with it. That'd probably be a really nice combo. The two of those. No pun intended, combo, but yeah, like the combination of those two amps together, very cool. So yeah. All right, what else we got here? Let's see. Let's see. Speaking of mix amp, Mick Mars. To be on Tone Talk. That's right. He is. He's going to do a Tone Talk with Dave. Dave loves Mick. He's a big fan of his new record, by the way, and it is really good. So you should check it out. Give it a listen. That'll be really cool. I got to give him a call, but Blue Saraceno, got to set up that episode. Maybe we'll even do that next week if possible. Or maybe the week after that. Although I've got a little trip coming up. So the week after that, no, because I'll be in Europe for a minute. So it'll either have to be next week or 3 weeks from now. Yeah. So have you heard Mick Mars solo? Yeah, a little bit. And it's cool. It sounds really good. Great tones, big production. Dig it. Yeah. Okay. There is a bit of scratchiness sometimes coming through. Not sure where it is coming from. I don't know. Maybe my check. No, it's not clipping. Scratchiness. Probably something physical I'm doing here, like my something. I don't know. The gain looks a little low, I will say. I'm going to bump that a little bit right now. Hey, check. What's up? Just going to pull up the preamp a little. Sound better? Clearer, maybe? Okay. I think I'm way behind in the chat, so I'm going to move down. You can't do a clinic everywhere. It'd be great to have one in the Seattle area. I would love to do something in Seattle. I have never done a clinic up there, so that'd be cool. Maybe I could do there in Vancouver and move around a little bit. Oh yeah, I'm so far back. This is where I was talking about that sort of the second tier of British players that were badass. Mick Ronson and Mick Taylor for sure. Frampton, great example. That my good friend Peter, Frampton, just incredible. Had he been another, he would probably be one of those, the first tier, old school guys from the 60s, if he wasn't, 14 in 1965 or whatever he was, So, he's incredible. I love Peters and his playing. Such a great tone and phrasing and just instincts on the guitar. Who is the guitar star of the next generation? Well, we're already kind of seeing that, I think. I always use Yvette as an example because I think she's very creative and as a composer, and she incorporates singing into incredible guitar playing, and she's soulful, in her own, she's known for math rock, but like she's got her own, she's definitely like tapped into something. Who's the amazing guitar player that just turned 18? The female guitar player plays an SG from Nashville that I'm spacing on her name right now. Somebody say it in the chat. You'll know who I'm talking about. She's awesome. Anybody with a little soul, there's lots of great people out there that are. Robin Trower is another really good example. Brian Setzer. Brian Setzer I don't think of as, I was talking specifically British guys, but Brian's incredible. He's got his own thing. I was thinking more about the English guitar players, from late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. You should interview Lukather or Mick Mars. Well, Mick we'll leave that up to Dave, because I think that's going to be great. Steve Morse is a pilot. Yeah, I believe he's a commercial pilot, actually. Yeah, which probably really helped pay the bills when, not doing tours with, Dixie Dregs and stuff. It's great to have that to fall back on, a whole nother career with benefits. Oh, Lifeson's a pilot. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Maybe I'd heard that. That's interesting. Yeah. Have you used two different sounding amps at the same time? Say two differently voice amps set to crunch tones? A little bit. Who told me that they do that like all the time is Michael Beinhorn. So like the Super Unknown album, a lot of the rhythm tones, the dirty rhythm stuff, is a blend of 800 or 2203 or 4. I'm not sure which, but it was that style circuit. Like think JCM 800 style Marshall, and a rectifier. So they blended those two sounds, and Beinhorn's a big fan of that. I know, doing that. Yeah. Are you going to demo the new Synvertech pedals? There's a new one. Yes, I am supposed to do that, along with many other things. But yes, yeah. Well, this is a nice comment. I was depressed today, feeling okay now. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, just talking about stuff you love, guitar and music and stuff, can definitely pull you out of that, can't it? It's a great thing about playing guitar. Did anybody see, by the way, the Michael Landau video for the Coma guitar? It's terrific. It's a really nice video where he's talking about the guitar that he calls the Coma guitar, and it's quite long, and there's a lot of terrific playing in it, where he played some of his well-known hits, and but he's talking about spiritually what the guitar does for him, and how the world's crazy, and that he finds that playing guitar is an instant way to make everything better. Transport his state of mind and stuff like that. I really enjoyed the video, because you hear that in his playing. His like, because the great thing about playing guitar, or talking about guitar even, but definitely playing music, and is that you'll probably find that this same thing, that you can be in a bad mood, but when you start playing 3 minutes later after the song's over, you've completely changed perspective. It's a total reset, because it requires all your facilities, physical and mental, and so I've always loved that about guitar. Could also put you in a bad mood if your amp breaks or something while you're trying to play. But let's say the stars are aligning, and it's one of those good days on the guitar. I love that about the guitar, and about playing music in general. So, yeah. But anyway, watch the Mike Landau Coma guitar video that's on the Fender website, and they made a really nice demo. It's a demo basically, but it's next level. I think so. Wonderful. So, EVH and Hagar would have never met if they didn't love Italian supercars, I think you were saying. Yeah, they were both at their, I think his name was Mario, the guy that worked on their cars, and they met at the repair shop. I don't know that that's necessarily true, though, because there was a connection there. Don Landay, Ted Templeman talks about in his book that he never felt like that they should have replaced Dave, but Dave left, and he talks about how he thinks it should have been called a different band, because it's not Van Halen without Dave and stuff like that. That was Ted's impression, and he's like, he had to eat his words a little bit, because they did have hits and things went pretty well, but he still, he maintained that in the beginning, he didn't really understand Dave, and then quickly he recognized that his unique thing was part of what made them great, and then he completely 180'd and basically be like, you can't do Van Halen without Dave. So that was Ted's thing. But Ted did produce Montrose, so there was that connection there, and Don Landay was a part of that. So there was that connection there, not just Ted. And I think they would thought about Montrose for a long time, and that, so maybe he would have met Sam. I mean, yeah, it was probably a serendipitous chance thing that they met at the auto shop that one day or whatever at the garage. And Ben Tom says, I too love Italian superstars. Vasco Rossi, etc. No, supercars. Speaking of which, I'm going to Italy soon, and I'm going to go, I think, to the Ferrari factory. Speaking of Italian supercars, it's relevant. In a couple weeks from now, I will be there. So I get a little tour, I think. It's going to be, I think, a very interesting day, but it's a long story. More on that to come. Let's see. I'm still running a Supersonic Twin, I remember that amp, and a Flextone 3. Hey, that's cool. whatever works. Do a video on the Flexi. I'm curious. Yeah, I should. It's a neat amp. So is the market really tanking? PRS and Exotic have these big giveaways. Wonder if they're struggling to move product. I don't think it's tanking would be a strong word. I think it's probably just fluctuating a little bit. I think sales were down after a peak of COVID, but it's like maybe it was just a reset, like in the music, because everything went up during COVID times. People were home and needed hobbies to pursue. So maybe you couldn't, I think dealers like Sweetwater were up like 40% during COVID. You can't expect it to stay there though, right? Because that was an anomaly of everybody being home, and then they get back to work and, the reality of everything getting back to whatever. So, right. Guitars for your project there with a super chat. Favorite way to capture your amp for quad Cortex line out with aux? Mike. The Suhr reactive load. Then you can just take the output of that and go into the quad, then add a cab sim in the quad. And I find it sounds great. And when I'm not modeling the whole thing, it's okay to do the whole thing too. But, the cab block in the quad is terrific. And it's now got an IR block in it if you want to just add IRs too, to add your own. So sure, you can capture the whole thing, but it paints you into the corner a little more, right? Because if you've got an amp capture with a cabinet and the mic's all baked in, well, you're not going to be running into a guitar cabinet after that. That's just going to be a direct thing that you're going to use that way, right? But if you capture your amp using a reactive load or something, just put the amplifier sound in the unit, and then you can add a cab or use it with a power amp and a guitar cabinet later. It's a little more versatile that way, and probably ends up sounding just as good, if as for most people, unless you have a really stellar mic pre, right, and a great cabinet with speakers you just love, and you've mic'd it just perfectly and all that stuff, sure, then you can get a great capture, but you're still locked into using that, not with a power amp or anything. Let's use full range cabs. But so yeah, I find the reactive load method works great. And that's mostly what I use, is those direct amp captures. How do you like a new Mac and Logic 11? Love it. Really love it. I haven't used any of the session player stuff really. I can't quite figure it out yet, but I need to read more about it, or just watch some demo videos on it myself or something. Just like virtual bass player and stuff. The sounds are good though. Like when you listen to them, it's like, oh, that sounds like a guy playing bass. This is new Logic. It's got like these AI session players built in that you can use for your tracks. Kind of wild. For me, it's like I probably just come up with my own bass part, right? I could do it quicker, but maybe for some things, stem splitter works really good, and I'm actually using it in my clinic for playing a couple of these covers that I'm going to do in the clinic to show some classic guitar tones by great players. I can go through and remove the guitar, out of tracks. That works quite nicely. Yep. Nice features though in the new Logic, and I love the new computer. It's very fast. It's helping me. Even today when I sat down, I was kind of late, and it's like I got in here and I could start it up in like 1 minute, and I'm working. My old computer would take a while to connect to my audio interface, and it seemed slow for 5 minutes, and then it finally, how that happens. That tune you played on the Soldano SLO, I think you're trying to say 2 video, was fire. Thank you. What's it called? Oh, geez, I don't know. I never name these things. I just write them as quick little demos for the products. I think I am actually going to use that little piece of music though in my clinic coming up, because I really liked it, and I feel like it sort of demonstrates that that tone, the crunchy amp distortion, like straight up kind of core tone that I use a lot. That's my example for that, because I was like, well, I just came up with this track. I know how to play it. I don't have to relearn it. This is a good example for that. So I'm going to perform that in the clinic. And then I goose the lead sound a little bit and add some circular delay and stuff. And so I'll be talking about that in the clinic. Yeah. That Fender way, we're talking about the modeling Fenders here, of doing those modelers is what I said Marshall should have been doing years back. They never seemed to move forward with the times. Well, it was a gamble, I would say. Like, the thing with modeling amps, like think about the original Line 6, whatever the heck it was called. I don't remember the name, but the original modeling Line 6, right? And then the flex tones, and everybody wanted to put everything but the kitchen sink in. Effects, 10 different kinds of models. And then they would add more models, and they would add more and more and more. And there's everything all in one. And Fender went, what if we just did one sound? And it was bold, I think, like I'd love to have heard they had meetings. I'd love to be the fly on the wall in the first meeting where somebody came up with that idea. Maybe we should do a one sound modeling amp. People are, you're crazy. It's supposed to be versatile, right? But somebody, that's a good idea. Like, I think, really good idea, and make them look like almost indistinguishable, like what if you made a 4-hole plexi that was actually modeling and it actually did the thing. And it was like, like whatever in an amp, yeah, you're right. Like Marshall should have done it. It looks cool, but then put a DI out on it. That sounds like the UA Lion, or something. Yeah, why not? It was smart. And a gamble, but it worked, I think. What kind of mods, if any, did Dave F do to your Soldano? You'd have to ask Dave. There is a small something, but I don't know exactly. He went through it, and he just, if there was anything different than a very old one, the original design, I think he did that. So, but you'd have to ask him. And it does sound really great, my Soldano. It's cool. I already answered that, I think. Or no, I didn't. That was a different question about the same thing from Earl. How do you like the new Mac and Logic? I'm working on learning all the AI arranger features and how to best use them. So I don't know yet, because I haven't figured that out. Like how to actually, will it follow your chord progression and stuff and come up with a part for your song? I haven't figured that out. I thought that's what it was supposed to do, but I don't know how to do that yet. Like, what do you do? Side chain a guitar part into it or something and tell it figures out what you're doing? I'm not sure. So I might look at that actually right after I get done here, which is going to be soon because I've gone 2 hours. So yeah, I'll wrap up here in the next 10 minutes or so. Yeah. I would rather get the Tone Master Pro if you're going to pay $1,300 for one model. Well, certainly there's going to be some people that those Fender amps aren't going to resonate with. Other people are going to want more features and effects and all that. Like if I'm getting a modeler, I want all this different stuff. But Fender went, hey, everybody's doing that. Let's do this other thing where we make it look like a deluxe reverb and people can use it with their pedal boards or whatever. But it's light and it's got a speaker. So it's easy to take to a jam or, use in a club gig or whatever. And it's a familiar look. Or maybe it's if you're a deluxe reverb user or a super reverb user, be like, I don't want to haul my super. It's too loud. It's, really heavy. Oh, we make one that's like way lighter and looks the same as your, they made it for those people, I think, So, and there's a a snobby look thing to it too. It looks like a Fender amp. So if you're in an indie rock band or something, you can get away with, it's a modeling amp. It's not, but it's kind of not. The thing about it is modeling amps just aren't that cool in some circles, It's not it's not a, if you're a hipster or whatever, it's not really the cool thing to use. So, right. So although it might seem silly to some of us, I think that's a concern. Some people just like the look of a twin or whatever. So, yeah. Riding an electric Harley is like rooting for the away team at an Eagles home game. You're going to get your ass kicked. Well, I got to say it was really cool, and for the kind of person that doesn't care about that stuff, that's what I mean. I mean, it's like, there's different kind of, it's not cool to some, obviously like Harley is like, a Harley is like playing a 63 Strat or something for a lot of people. It's just cool and old school and classic, but it's like, there's this new Z-Bug or whatever, or like, electric Porsches that look like they're the old speedsters from the 50s, but they're electric. It's like it's like blasphemy to some people. To other people, it's like, that's cool. We're not all the same, Not everybody feels the same. So, That's part of marketing and figuring out products, is that in this world, it's like you might think, well, this is what people want. And it's like, yeah, but some people want the other thing. And whether or not you like that, you have to recognize that that's a big segment of the market and there's something there, and, if it doesn't exist, maybe you should go for it. So, yeah. So I've got the PT15IR, really is an amazing amp. I run into the PT15212. And by the way, that cabinet makes every amp I've used on it sound better. That's awesome. It's a great little cab. I'm not going to claim that we came up with it. It's very, very, very similar to the Marshalls that, were used for the 2061X, and divided by 13 has a similar cab. The kind of the array of speakers is done like this. It looks like a baby 412, but it's 2 speakers. They're a terrific cabinet that size. I always like them. And it just looks neat. So yeah. Use my vintage Fenders for recording at home, but I've invested in small, lightweight Kingsley preamps for the library I'm building. Best of both worlds of lightweight and real tube sound. Yeah, they've got a unique take on how to do things, the Kingsley folks. So yeah, for sure. Should mention I had a nice dinner this week with Rhett Shull and his significant other, his better half, which was really fun. It was really nice to see him, and we had some sushi and talked about stuff. He's always got great ideas for YouTube videos, so it was a nice time. He was in town for something. It was cool. Smart guy. Yeah, good dude. Paul Stanley has a one-off Engle that he's playing on that Ernie Ball video, and my God, it sounds amazing. Really, I should listen to that. Should check that out. Yeah. What's the difference between amps and modelers? Is the difference between amps and modelers is money and volume. That's interesting. I've never thought of it that way, but yeah. Okay, I'm so far back in the chat, aren't I? That I'm just gonna kind of move down here and make sure I haven't missed super chats and stuff. Then I got to get going. Got a couple gigs in Malta in October. That's interesting. What's the backline situation like there? I took a modeler, and I did my quad Cortex. This is in Malta. I did my quad Cortex into a Seymour Duncan power amp, which I just carried in a backpack, and I used a rented. You could probably rent the same cab I did. It's probably there at the one backline company in Malta, but it was a Randall 412 with V30s, and it was just fine. Good sounding cabinet. I would recommend doing that. Go modeler, and maybe modeler power amp if you want to use a cab on stage. Then you've got your sounds all dialed in and stuff. Pedalboard hired amp, you just don't know what you're going to get. I mean, it might be fine, but it might not. So. Can you do some chicken picking? There you go. Sorry, I don't even have a pick. That was my thumb and fingers. When using the in-ears on tour, do you have the full band in your mix? Yeah, I do. Everything. I like to hear a mix. I hate the concept of people only listening to themselves. When I hear that people do that, I'm like, ugh, I know there's examples of good players doing that and stuff, but it's like, that can't be fun. Playing music with yourself and a click track on stage. I don't want to hear that guy. Afterwards it was like, yeah, fun show. Yeah, I never heard you all night. It's like, I don't want that. I want a full band mix. Basically, it's like full band mix with me just a little above, so I can, or even just right in there, and some audience. That's it. That's what I like. Then you're playing with other people and responding to them. That's what music's supposed to be, a conversation. I get angry about it. Okay. Let's see here. To your point, do you think the Beatles would have played live concerts together longer? Yeah. If the PA tech in the mid 60s had the necessary tech they achieved in the 70s. Well, sure enough. I mean, you saw, George Harrison do, a concert for Bangladesh. You saw Lennon out there a little bit, and you certainly saw Paul McCartney playing live in the 70s. So yeah, I think that they would have, and I think there's no doubt, that they, it was just the frustration of like, imagine being as creative as the Beatles and writing such great songs, and then you go out and perform and nobody can hear you. It's like, we're musicians. We're not like monkeys or whatever, like out here to just jump around on stage and have people, cheer and pee their pants. That's not what it was about for them. They wanted to be artists. So it just didn't make sense, and it was getting dangerous and just kind of like, keep in mind, like concert security wasn't a thing. And like they brought to the forefront all the problems and things that needed to be solved if this was going to become a thing. Big rock concerts with, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people attending, it was like, oh, here's an opportunity, but we're doing it, but it's not working. It's not, this is silly. So then quickly there's like, because there's obviously dollar signs and money to be made. And they, it's like, well, there's obviously demand for this kind of thing. So let's come up with all the stuff that we need to do it. Anybody buy Oasis tickets this week? Do you see the crazy Ticketmaster controversy and stuff and how much the tickets were going for? And whole tour sold out in like one day. Multiple stadium shows. Amazing. Good on them. I mean, I know it's not fun if you were an Oasis fan waiting in line for 8 hours for tickets and then you got booted out of the line because the whole system, once again, maybe the system is, I saw the best comment was like, imagine calling yourself Ticketmaster and then having that debacle. Like, master of what? I guess a bunch of people got kicked out because they thought they were bots, but they were actually just like real people waiting for tickets, and they're like, you're a bot, so out of line, that whole thing. Like the system's screwed, obviously. So, and there is a point to be in the working class band, and then your tickets are £500 each or whatever, £700 each, like, because there's this dynamic pricing thing that if there's tons of demand, then the price goes up over face value, and sometimes drastically. It's a little broken, for sure. Like that's not sustainable. So, but hey, keeping it in the light, I love Oasis. So I do. I'm a fan. I'd love to see them. Probably not going to happen. How close is your third channel PT15 to a Friedman BE? Well, I mean, it's a similar architecture, the second and third channel. It's very similar in many ways to something like a BE. They're all, sort of Marshall derivative based. So, could be tweaked, modded to be extremely similar. But there's different values and stuff going on, coupling caps and things like that. So, but it's long story short, not far off. A lot of amps are similar, in that regard. I'm eagerly awaiting the revival of my Pete Thorn signature HSS. That's awesome. I was so stoked you got one. There you go. It's coming to you soon. Wildwood guitars. Love to see a demo of the Thornbucker 2 series split and tonal options. Yeah, I mean, it sure, you actually hear it in the Soldano video that I just did, for example, the SLO2 module. I'm using this guitar, and you can kind of hear the, the straight up humbucker tone. And then for the rhythm guitar part, where I'm just playing football chords, you can hear me playing with the pickup in this position, which will split this pickup and go to this one too. So that's like one little demo you can listen to of, kind of that tone. It's got a great sound. I mean, to be honest, the hot pickup, like it paints you into a corner a little bit as far as it being, a darker, more mid-range sound when it's full on. But if you just kick it in parallel like that, now you've got a brighter, more balanced to the single coils pickup. So these two sounds are like both super usable. And then kicking that into single, you still get the parallel sound when you put the switch in position 2, and then this is pulled. This will be parallel and this will be single. That's a cool sound. Push it down, this coil splits then, and now you're only getting the one, and it's a slightly different, just slightly less output actually. So this sound, position 2, split, this makes it just a hair thicker in the bridge, but it's a similar sound. It's like, oh yeah, it is a little different. It's kind of cool. And then add to that all the other positions, you get a ton of variety there. So for sure. Todd Royer had a later model King Royale for a bit. I sold it. Probably should have just kept it. And that's that top hat that I love so much. Chef Jeff says, I never got my D-Tuna to work, took it out. Yeah, you got to do it the right way. D-Tuner, I had a little, for those that joined late, I did a little bit on that. You just need to set it up, like I say, so that the fine tuner's backed all the way out. Tune the low string to D, lock up. Part of the problem is if you lock it and it goes sharp at all, that means that the nut probably isn't in quite the right place, or the bar behind, because you got to be able to lock it down without changing the tension at all. So the nut is kind of crucial. But if you can do that, if you can get it in tune, lock it, and the string's good and stretched out, lock it, and then you push the D-Tuna in and out, it should almost be perfectly in tune. And if you need to fine tune it at all, you just do it on the little set screw. Once I learned how to do it, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Then it works really good and highly usable. So you'll find that if you get one of these guitars, as the gentleman just said, he's got one on the way, set it up that way, and you'll probably find it really fun. Yeah. Totally agree regarding SLO dirt, like pea gravel versus sand. Yeah, it's just something, I don't know, it's a way to try and describe sound. It's difficult. Orange amps have large grain distortion too. Yeah, and more sort of low mids and stuff too. It's interesting. That's good. Orange is sort of like, I would say so. Yeah. You own a D-Tuna on your guitar, but you cannot tune a fish. Okay. I should go soon, guys. I'm sorry. This was great. There's a ton of comments here. I didn't get to a lot, and I was kind of behind a lot in the chat. But there's Peter Evans. Killer Sunday Show. Will any of your clinics be done in LA? Videos this week. There's a dealer out in kind of the West Valley that has been doing a lot of Suhr clinics. Like Reb did one there. James Ivani did one there. I'd love to go to that dealer and do some. So I'm sure that'll be coming maybe in the new year. The first few that I'm going to do, I can maybe announce next week. Nothing in LA yet, but yeah, that'll probably happen. I want to do it all over the place, including there's probably nobody watching right now, but I want to take it to Japan fairly soon. So I think I'm going to try and do that. Maybe do another Europe run. We'll see. I'm just getting my feet wet on it, but I'm calling it, Inspired by the Tone 2024, 2025 clinics. So hopefully, because next year I'll have a lot of cool stuff that we can get into, and that hopefully we've got the amp out by then, plus interesting things guitar wise and different things coming. So, and not only that, I want to kind of hook up with, I need to contact and speak with, because as I've developed in the clinic, I've realized I'm using the quad Cortex quite a bit in the clinic, as well as my PT15s. So I want to see if I can get neural involved on the clinic end and stuff, because it's really showing off a lot of the stuff that the neural, a lot of the new things in the quad, like the transposer, there's some really neat new stuff in there that, when you integrate into your rig, you're like, oh, how did I not ever have this before? This is really cool. So I feel like it's a great demonstration of some of that stuff. So we'll see, but I plan to do it. I'm excited about it and just still developing it. So that's what I'm going to do today, is kind of hopefully finish up on the musical end of what I'm playing and everything, and then arranging it today. It's funny, I'm running into the same problem. Britt is doing a drum clinic, and she's putting together a whole bunch of tracks that she's played with different artists, and then talking about how she incorporates things like a SPD Roland pad into her modern pop drumming, and so it's rock drums, it's pop drums, it's how to interpret things, it's how to make pop tracks sound more exciting for live. It's gonna be a really great clinic. So I've been helping her develop that too. I'm running into some of the same things that she is, which is like, maybe there's too much music. Like, we put together these clinics both at the same time, and it's like, yesterday I realized, like, her performance that she's doing well, it's great, it's maybe too long, so I said, why don't you break it up into two? And we found a place where she can kind of cut it in the middle, play 4 pieces of music all back to back to back, discuss those, talk about a bunch of stuff in the middle, and then go, okay, let's do a little more playing now. And then she can do a little bit more towards the end of the clinic, and then maybe open it up to Q&A. So and I think mine's going to be like that too. Maybe 2 segments of music with some talking in the middle, so that it's broken up, stays interesting. Hopefully. All right. Did I get all the super chats? I think I did. I hope I didn't miss any. If I did, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I did. I think I saw them all. Thanks so much. Hey, Ben's got a hang tonight on his channel. So once again, Ben Coombs. Where is he there? Where are you, Ben? Where are you there, dude? I just saw a post from you. I was gonna light it up. I've lost it now. I don't know. It's an imperfect thing. My eyes and this chat. But anyways, I'll see you guys next week. I'll be here same time, same place next week. I'll work out a time with Blues to get them on. It'll be next week or maybe 3 weeks from now. One of the two. More info on clinics. All this fun, exciting stuff coming. The sky's the limit. Be nice to one another. Have a great week out there. And take care, everybody. That's Toby on my shirt. That's my cat. Say hi to all your friends for me. Be nice to one another. I'll miss you all this week. And I look forward to next time. Thanks a lot. See ya.